all including classes. That is punishment. There's PPE.
Just like dying.
It's a great negotiator about that.
It's only 28 feet off the road. It's like in the middle of the night, I have to get up and turn off because I was like overheating. I'm all like, I'm not like anything. It's my I personally don't work person that I can't stand it. He is radiating down the back. So either I have to close it or open a window, and that's even worse because
but I was gonna go there.
that's something you know.
All right, good Monday morning, everyone. It's our first Monday of the week before Thanksgiving. Hope you all had a great weekend. I've taken a peek at a lot of the submissions already for the advertising analysis assignment, and the papers look really great. So good job, you guys. I'll probably get those graded probably by the Friday after Thanksgiving. All right, so give me a good full 2 weeks here because of Thanksgiving. I had an excellent weekend at the Midwest Association for Public Opinion Research Conference. I presented my paper called A Big Fracking Problem, Community Conversations About Frac Sand Mining in Wisconsin. So it's kind of a spin-off of a presentation that I did about a month ago here at Carroll, but for this Public Opinion Research Conference where they do a lot of statistical modeling about the effects of media on public opinion. And so mine was about how journalists construct stories differently about these special issues as they emerge over time. So frac sand mining really became huge in the state of Wisconsin in 2010, and in just 4 short years, 135 mines have popped up in the state, so quite a few. So my study looked at media coverage in 2010 from the news, and then also in 2015, 5 years later, this past year. I'm not biased. It is a big problem overall, whether you're pro or con sand mining, because the oil and gas market is down right now. So unfortunately, a lot of the mines are what they're called idling. They're not up and running, so a lot of folks are laid off by that. So we'll see what the market does next year. Tomorrow, actually, Winona County in Minnesota, their board is voting, and they're expected to be the first county in the United States to ban frac sand mining. So pretty interesting stuff.
Do you know if it's banned in Illinois?
Not yet.
Okay, because I know they were like trying to get it out, I think, as well there.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps some of you saw the 60 Minutes clip about all of the mining going on in Oklahoma and the earthquakes that are caused by that. Germany has banned fracking. But Wisconsin is the largest exporter of silica sand, which is a sand that's needed. It's called a proppant. When you fracture the rock, then to extract the gas and the oil, the sand mixed with water and some other liquids help keep the rock open so that the gas can escape. So it's a major industry in Wisconsin, but of course environmental advocates, there's some health cases as well. Over 75 people have been diagnosed with cancer caused by the sand particles. So it's an interesting issue, however you look at it. I bring it up today especially because it's a good example for kind of some advertising analysis that you'll want to do for our next and our final assignment for the semester, our final essay. Right. So I put a copy of that research paper up on my courses if you want to take a look at it. My study is looking at newspaper coverage of this issue. All right. This news analysis assignment, it's found on my courses if you go to coursework. And it's, you scroll down the page a little ways, and it's called Evaluating Reporting. All right. So you can go ahead and open that. It's just a short Word document. So this is due 12/12, okay, the very last day that we'll be in class, okay, where we'll have our review for the final exam, all right? Upload a copy to my courses just like always, okay? 2 to 3 pages, Times New Roman font, size 11, with an additional reference page, okay? What this assignment is asking you to do is to pick a news story, an issue, probably that relates to some public opinion, garnered by some strategic communications. So we just wrapped up our advertising and our PR segment. So maybe pick an issue where there have been some notable sides on this case, this issue in the media. Maybe some conflict, some crisis, okay? Read how that story is covered by 2 different news properties. Okay, so maybe 2 daily newspapers or 2 weekly magazines, okay? They have to be comparable in their format, all right? So you can't compare a broadcast script for ABC News with the Waukesha Freeman, right? There you're comparing apples to orange too much, right? The Freeman is a local paper, it's local, whereas ABC News is national, right? So they're at 2 different levels. That might work if that's the case of your paper. If you're saying perhaps the local paper covered this better than a national paper, that might be okay. But I think comparing a TV script to a newspaper, they're just going to be too different. Often news broadcasts are very short when they talk about an issue, maybe a minute and 30 seconds given to an issue or a topic, whereas a newspaper might devote a whole column, maybe some more content on the subsequent pages. So compare maybe newspapers to newspapers, magazines to magazines, websites to websites. You could use your the PIO guides, the online library resources, to access LexisNexis. You can look at any transcript of any news show across the country. Okay, so that's a great resource for you. So then you'll compare those with 2 authoritative articles. So some scholarly articles, go into scholar.google, type in news bias or news comparison, something like that. Here's a little word of warning. This assignment is not perhaps as simple as it seems. A news story is rarely confined to a single news report. So you might want to follow an issue through a couple different articles, all right, or a week's worth of coverage, okay? And then what your paper is going to be is, how was this covered? Did one organization do better than the other? Did they have different angles? Did they have different goals that perhaps one succeeded more so than the other one? Did they have different agendas to begin with their coverage of this topic? So today we're going to talk a little bit about bias in the news. We're going to talk about how we perceive news as a culture. And I think this assignment then is kind of a good example of how we can look at news and evaluate it and what we expect out of news. Right? When we get back from Thanksgiving break, we will do about, a day or 2 again on journalism to give you some tools to be able to begin really working on these papers. But you've got 3 weeks now almost to work on this. I'm just assigning it to you now so you can think about it, put it in the back of your head, okay? You don't have to definitely get started on it over Thanksgiving break. I know you have other things going on, but I want you to be thinking about it, surveying the media landscape for issues that have gone on. We're probably all tired of the election, so maybe steer away from those things. Pick an issue that kind of interests you, like we're exploring Mars and other planets lately. There's lots of talk about, right, investing in NASA and whatnot. So maybe you want to look at an issue like that and how that's being covered from different types of sources. Maybe the Christian Science Monitor or other newspapers. So pick an issue, a topic that interests you. Yeah.
So the news story can literally be anything you want.
It just has to have some substance, some real good meat to it. A national issue is probably preferred, or a topic, so that you can really compare a couple reputable news sources. But again, you might compare a local coverage to a broader one. So any questions about this, our final essay assignment? Any others? Good? All right. keep that in the back of your mind over the next few weeks. Of course, if you have questions, email me and let me know. Now we'll get rolling with class today. If you want to go ahead on my courses under participation, class participation, I put some a document up there for today's lesson called Superhero Journalism. As you were coming in, I was kind of playing that song. It was big back when I was growing up, when I was in high school. 3 Doors Down, does anyone remember that band? Okay, a couple people. That was kind of my first big concert. I came, what's the big theater over here in Milwaukee? Where it's grassy though.
Oh, the amphitheater?
The amphitheater, is that over here or is that near Chicago?
The Marcus is on the Summerfest grounds.
Okay, no, I think it's the amphitheater, big grass-like area and whatnot. So yeah, so I have some memories of 3 Doors Down, but their song is about a superhero, right? Kryptonite, right? The song is called, I think, and it's kind of this play off of Superman, right? Kind of human needs to want to be better than ourselves. And so I thought today, kind of as an introduction to our journalism and our information unit, we just left our strategic communication unit, now we're moving into informative communication. So we'll talk about journalism a little bit, and also effects on global democracy, things like that. And so I thought today it'd kind of be interesting to look at how journalism is already kind of permeating our culture, even outside of the news, and especially in our entertainment programming. So I know contemporary films really feature this entire superhero genre, and it's really interesting about how much journalism actually pervades the genre. So who are some of these people up here? Can you tell me who they are and who is their alter ego in the films? I've got some comic strips. These are actually all comic strips. These, of course, all go back to Marvel Comics, DC Comics, now being films, movies. Who's Superman in real life? And what's his profession? Yeah, he's a journalist, right? He works with Lois Lane, okay? Clark Kent, right? So here, of course, he's right, Superman, all powerful, all these superhuman capabilities, and then during the daytime, he's kind of a nerd, right? He's wears like a suit and tie, glasses, and he's kind of very bookish, does research, but investigative reporting, right? He's finding corruption. And here's a picture of Lois Lane from 1972 comic. She's saying, "I'm a journalist. Everything I write reaches millions of people. I have a responsibility to those people. There's far too much injustice all around us to be ignored any longer." So here we're seeing a strong female in the profession, kind of rising through the ranks. Females are a minority in journalism, however, have really worked their way up through the ranks and have made major impacts on the world. I was just talking with my feature writing class last week. Unfortunately, Gwen Eiffel, the news anchor for PBS, died of cancer last week. And she was part of the first all-female news anchor cast in all of U.S. television media, as well as was an African-American woman. So really made some major pushes for women in the field. So here we see a strong Lois Lane character. So she's a journalist too, right? So someone thought he was a photographer, but who's actually the photographer up here?
Peter.
Yeah, Peter Parker, all right? So he's a photojournalist, right? He take pictures of himself and other crimes occurring, right? Using photography as evidence, not, right, kind of before Photoshop, before tinkering with the pictures, but, right, so photojournalist. There's someone else with a camera up there. Who's that? This is a tougher one. That's Vicky Vale. You know her? So she's a photojournalist for Batman. If you think way back to like Michelle Pfeiffer, old school, Jack Nicholson Batman movies, you might remember her. Okay, so she's a photojournalist. Spider Jerusalem, he's up there in the far left corner. He practices a kind of journalism called gonzo journalism, which became really a major kind of radical way of looking at the news, and where journalists could be a part of the story, could affect news, be really active in the story, perhaps changing the trajectory of what occurs. Sometimes this becomes an ethical problem, of course, because journalists are supposed to observe and report, not be a part of the news. I had Dr. Im sent me an article about a journalist who was filming a major flood in Iowa, and while filming went and saved someone from the flood that pulled her out. And so there's a question a lot of the times here: how much do you intervene if you're covering children starving in other countries, right? Are you wanting to help them, right? We saw in that Whiskey Tango Foxtrot movie how she, right, is trying to help the poor. So part of us as journalists know we're not supposed to interact or report, and then another extreme, perhaps this gonzo journalism, says we see all these problems in the world, we need to affect them, we need to be superheroes and fight corruption and help, help society get through these issues. And then this last one down here, anyone know this one? Sometimes international students know this a bit better. This one's Tintin. So a comic for a lot younger children out of Belgium, and kind of has spread throughout Europe, Africa, and lots of European influence there, but popular in the United States as well. There was a big movie, a film, animated feature that came out a couple of years ago, started here in the US. So anyway, what this slide is kind of showing is that for whatever reason, we have a lot of superheroes who are also journalists and are in the media. And I don't think that that's a coincidence, right? Why do you guys think maybe journalists are superheroes in a lot of these films, these comics? Yeah, Jacob?
Because journalists kind of have access to a lot of places that normal people can't get in, because it's like bank credentials, and they're able to get in the more serious and dangerous places too. Like if a bank's being robbed, they can get closer than probably other people can because they're journalists. So it allows them better access to fight crime.
Sure, definitely. Any other ideas? So you had a good couple examples there. So they have maybe access to people in power. They're working for the media. People in power need to have their issues covered so that they can get public support for different initiatives that they're trying to work on. So journalists, when they report on that, that kind of helps spread information about these things going on, maybe in politics or business. So they're right there in the midst of a lot of the action that occurs on a daily basis in society. As well, they might have some special privileges. They're perhaps allowed closer to the scenes. They also know how to navigate the scenes. They know that they can go in and use the open records law to be able to look at the different reports for crimes and things like that. They perhaps have a police scanner. In fact, all newsrooms will have a police scanner there so that they can keep track of what's going on, to go out and find where are the accidents occurring or where's a crime happening. If you go right now to the Wisconsin Journal Sentinel, if you would Google in Wisconsin Journal Sentinel crime tracker, go ahead, take a second, and you'll find that they have consistent, up-to-the-minute map of the Milwaukee area every time a shot is fired, every time a crime occurs, something is reported. You'll see they're different coded. Just search in Google like Milwaukee Journal Sentinel crime tracker, and it should pop up. Did you find some, Isabel? Oh yeah? What do you have going on today there, Brittany? Oh yeah, alright. So maybe if you hover your mouse over the different dots.
Yeah.
Let's see, so yeah, what does it say, what's happening? Can you read it aloud?
Police respond to report of reckless driving on November 20th, 2016 at 11:59 p.m.
Okay. Someone got another one? Anyone else? Yeah, Griff?
Police respond to a report of a strong armed robbery on November 20th, 2016 at 9:26 a.m.
Okay, yeah. So up to the minute, especially in this new information age, we still see a lot of this kind of, right, following the news, letting people know what's happening. Maybe we would know to avoid a certain area if something dangerous was going on. Unfortunately, on my drive in, I got off the exit, what is it 84? And, there was a major accident, like 3 cars at an intersection. So luckily I made it on time. But perhaps we could know that that's going on. Alerts on our phone. So real active journalism today still. So what we'll talk about here today is kind of the influence of journalists in pop culture. We'll talk about different styles of reporting the news and kind of using new technologies and making journalism really active and participatory today. And then we'll look at a few different effects of journalists and how we can also protect our work in the news through copyright and other kind of legal protections. So here I've got some handouts in paper, but also if you want to open up the superhero journalism document, if you want to just look on your computer screen. The first article I'd like us to look at today is called The Image of the Journalist in Popular Culture. So this is by Henry Jenkins, who runs a blog with passion about the effects of journalism on society. And it's an interview with Joel Saltzman. So he is a scholar of journalism and talks about the mixture of journalism in mass media and mass society today. He's a professor at the Annenberg School of Communication and has won many awards such as the Edward R. Murrow Award, Silver Gavel, so a really prestigious scholar. So why don't you take a couple minutes, go ahead, read through just this first article, all right? There's another one on there about zombie journalism. We'll hold off on that one. But just read this first one about how journalism what are some other contemporary roles that journalists play today? All right, I'll pass these out too if you don't want to stare at your screen. Feel free to talk, in groups with people, if you want to take turns reading, and kind of, someone can maybe ask the question and then follow up with the reading. It's kind of in a Q&A format from a newspaper. I got it.
Maybe like 20 questions and we each are going to talk for 5 minutes. So maybe 20 minutes.
Okay, good. So I'll do about 10 for the
singer-songwriters and rock bands unplugged in SiriusXM's Coffee House.
anyone figured out who the guy in red is on the second page? A good guess.
That's Daredevil.
Is it the Flash?
No, it's Daredevil.
Okay, yeah, Daredevil, that's what I was thinking, okay. I think the Ben Affleck movie was on cable just the other day, actually.
Let's not bring up that atrocity.
Are people going to see, isn't Ben Affleck gonna be a Batman and or was he in Batman versus Superman?
Yeah, he's got a solo film, Batman, coming out.
Okay.
Like they're working on the script, so.
What was your review of that one?
I actually didn't see it, but I heard it, from what I heard, it was like, people thought it was awful, but then Zack Snyder released the director's cut, so the cut that like the producers didn't mess with, and everybody loved the director's cut, so everybody's like, oh, so it wasn't the director that screwed it up, it was the producers that said to take this out, this out, this out, and change all the stuff.
Interesting, interesting. People need a minute or two more? Looks like people are at it. Alright. So we've got a couple of questions for you, some discussion questions here. Maybe you can talk with people next to you or nearby, and then we'll come together as a group. Actually, let's just talk as a group overall. We got to make time for our ethics presentation, so let's be sure we keep moving. Can you think of some positive or negative traits of journalists portrayed in pop culture in general? So there's a litany of various types of journalists in just comic books as superheroes. Superman, Spider-Man, The Question, reporter Vic Sage, tabloid vampire reporter Becky Burdock, The Vulcan, The Creeper, Jimmy Olsen, let's see, Ben Olbrich, April O'Neil from the Ninja Turtles. So what do you guys think? How are these portrayed? These are a lot of in the superhero cartoons, but in other movies or on TV, like Dark Angel or these other shows, how are journalists portrayed in the media?
Well, I just recently saw Spotlight,
Oh, yeah.
and that was, I think, more positively portrayed just because, like, the whole premise was that they uncovered something that had been basically just, like, illegal for a long time. So I feel like usually journalists are portrayed positively.
Definitely. We just covered that in my feature writing class, right? About even Wisconsin, the Archbishop in the Catholic Diocese of Wisconsin has really been under fire for its abuse of priests, of children. So yeah, definitely the Boston Globe exposed that, so perhaps they're portrayed as watchdogs for the public or really working on behalf of the public to expose injustice. Sarah, yeah, other ideas?
I think a lot of times it portrays them in a positive light. You can see that like in Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, how it was more like the heads of the news companies were choosing what was the thing that they were going to report on and what wasn't, whereas you had these reporters who were like, no, this needs to be talked about still. And they still wanted to be that watchdog, but then their producers were saying, no, you can't. And so I think that that's like a very realistic picture, and it shows that it's not just the journalists who are responsible for the news, but it's also the news sources themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of as Jacob was alluding to, even with the film process or with the news process, there are many hands, right, kind of crafting every story, every broadcast.
I think the only time journalists are kind of portrayed negatively is one, if a third party is manipulating the press against the protagonist. Like we saw it, if you in Sherlock they did it one time. or if it was a news reporter trying to uncover a secret of the protagonist, like Spider-Man and what's his name, J.K. Simmons' character in the show. Like,
Sure.
he was technically an antagonist because he was trying to reveal who Spider-Man was. So that's like the only time they're really negative. Because if it goes against, if it's trying to reveal the secret of the protagonist.
Yeah. So Spider-Man, for example, is perhaps involved in the story too much. He takes pictures of himself when he's out, right, to get on the front page and whatnot. So perhaps he is breaking some rules at some points, but he's also perhaps portrayed in negative ways too for kind of who he's perhaps against in the films. Griffin?
I was gonna say just in general, all the, outside of like superhero movies, you usually end up seeing journalists being like weasels and kind of like sneaky people that are always trying to like undermine the hero or whatever.
Yeah. So especially like if we think of gossip journalism or tabloid journalism, kind of sticking their nose in places where it doesn't belong, or trying to get right, the bad angle of the girls as they step out of the limousines, right, to splash it all over the pages or something. Yeah.
This is gonna sound funny, but like in Scooby-Doo, like the movies, like they always make their reporters kind of seem like only telling the good stuff kind of thing. So.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, so perhaps journalists as being like a lapdog for people in power, kind of mouthpieces or speakers. Sure, so we have these different perhaps portrayals of journalists in society. A couple from the assignment that I just assigned for our final essays, there was a couple cartoons on there, right, of, what is it, Brockman? Is that the journalist on The Simpsons? Kent Brockman? Yeah, so perhaps he's portrayed as being really vain, as a news anchor on TV, maybe that's a portrayal. The news team for the Family Guy, the male and female, I can't think of their names, but they're always acting really crazy.
Tom Tucker and
Diane.
There you go. And Trisha Takanawa, right? And I think there's a weather guy too, right? So they're kind of really making fun of the news, kind of some news stereotypes. So yeah, there's all these different portrayals of journalism and journalists, and I think that's because it plays such a major role in our society. So we can make fun of it, we can criticize it, we can also root for them when they're in these superhero cases. All right, we already talked about the superhero genre a bit. In the superhero genre, what are maybe some values that are shared between superheroes and journalists? Like how might the profession kind of cross with the films in this way? Or what are the values that the journalists seem to be promoting through their careers on the screen?
Justice.
Yeah, justice. So trying to right wrongs. Sarah?
Oh, that's really what I was gonna say. So.
Oh, okay. Maybe the truth, right? Trying to report the truth, find out what's happening, share information. Definitely promoting democracy, right? Open public sphere of communication. We saw in our film, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, right? Kind of her struggles working overseas in the Middle East, trying to get information for everyone. Is there another hand? Okay, so that's pretty good. Let's see. What would superpowers be that would be good for a journalist to have? What are some of the superpowers that some of these superheroes have that maybe help them do their job?
Invisibility.
Yeah, so you could maybe spy on people, find out what's happening, attack, sneak up on them.
Speed, like really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like sneak up on anything.
That'd be really important today. Get the story, go get it published, get the information out there, save the day.
Flying, just so that they can like, I don't know, become like a self-helicopter, and they can like look over it if you can't get to the source of the news or the area.
Yeah, I really like that observation, right? Being able to, yeah, be like a news chopper, except just being able to fly, get to the scene right away.
I just wanna bring, like, when you say that, like, it's a journalists kinda wanna get the story out there and stuff, like, isn't it kind of a case-by-case basis, like the spotlight pointed out on certain stories that are very sensitive, that are really critical, they need to take their time to get it right, or else like there could be big ramifications if they just jump to conclusions and then print it, or if they don't let the story play out completely. So it's like, you can't just always rush to print, you have to make sure everything's perfectly in line.
Definitely. So that's, of course, a pressure living in this 24-hour news cycle where you need to update the website all the time, and you have 24-hour cable news to get on and share breaking news with everyone. Maybe you don't take enough time to research those details, or maybe you need to sit on an investigative piece like that Spotlight example for a long time and wait to publish it till you have enough evidence to really make a difference. Which is difficult today when there's so many economic pressures to get the story out, get the scoop before someone else does. Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point with a value of like what we want journalism to be, but some of the pressures and constraints of the society today. Yeah, great point, Jacob. So here's kind of an overall narrative a bit about Superman. This was written by a scholar, B. McNair, in Journalism Practice that came out just a little while ago. And he really analyzes the Man of Steel film. Did you guys ever see this when that came out?
Yeah.
Okay, and he kind of looks at it from a scholar's point of view and the implications on journalism. I'll read just a little bit here for you. He says, this is called Oh Superman. He says, in the broader canon of films about journalism, the superhero subgenre is somewhat marginal, if far from insignificant. Spider-Man's alter ego, Peter Parker, is a photographer for a tabloid newspaper, the Daily Bugle. Superman, by day, mild-mannered Clark Kent, is a Daily Planet reporter. The adventures in which they feature have often